me share it.
Hey y'all, give us maybe like 2 more minutes and we'll get started. All right. You ready, Michelle?
I'm ready. Let's do it.
All right. Hey everybody, welcome back to Faith First. Of course, it's Michelle and I. And this week, our theme, or our topic rather, is Who Are You? And I think this is a great way to kind of sum up the theme of love that we kind of been covering the entire month of June. So Michelle, if you would please give us like a playback of what we talked about on last week, and then we'll jump into this week's study.
Yeah, so last week, guys, if you joined us, we talked about the story of Queen Esther. And our theme was, will you move or will you mourn? And it came from Esther, the book of Esther, obviously, chapter 4. And we talked about Esther's struggle in making the decision to advocate for her people. And essentially, her move in the decision that she made, obviously she decided to move, and she did that from love, a love of her people and a love of her tradition and a love, honestly, of God. And so we took that story and we broke it down in lots of different pieces. But I think one of the resounding things from last week was, just knowing that the power of one person, that one person can make such a big difference, that you're always wherever you are for a reason. And don't ever be afraid to do what's right, no matter what the noise is around you, that it's always the right time to do what's right. So that's what we talked about.
So this week we're coming out of John chapter 13,
Mm-hmm.
verses 34 and 35, two verses. And because it's short, I'm going to read it to you. I'm reading from the Message version, but they pretty much all read the same. It says, "Let me give you a new command. Love one another in the same way I loved you. You love one another. This is how everyone will recognize that you are my disciples when they see the love you have for each other." Right? So to kind of set the stage of where we are when Jesus gives them these words, he had just finished washing their feet, right? He had just completed an act of doing something that is deemed the lowest of lows. It's something that the lowest servant would do. But Jesus himself decided to wash their feet. And then from there, he identifies Judas as the traitor. And then he goes into the talk saying, I'm not going to be with you long, but here's something you should know, that you should love one another as I have loved you. This is how people will recognize you, by the love that you have
Yes.
for one another. And that is powerful, which is why it's titled, Who Are You? Because a lot of times I know, we'll say, well, I love God, I'm a Christian, right? But here Jesus is telling us, this is how we will be able to identify you, by your love, by your acts of kindness, right? So we like to say that we're a lot of things, but are you showing love to one another? That is the true way to identify a believer, a Christian, right? By your love for one another. And so I was telling Michelle before we started the live is I was reading different stories. One is that of the woman who's caught in adultery, and the religious leaders bring her to Jesus. And they did this in a way to humiliate her because it was publicly, while Jesus was already doing something else. Like, no, 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 this is important. We caught her in adultery. What do you say we do to her? Right? And during that time, it was commanded through Moses that you stone somebody who's caught in adultery. Now, we won't highlight the fact that she was caught with a man and they didn't bring her, bring him, right? But they brought her, and they were just trying to humiliate her. And Jesus took the path. He could have said, well, that's the commandment, stone her.
Mm-hmm.
But instead he said, you know, he without sin cast the first stone. And the only person there that was sinless was Jesus, right? But he tells them to cast the first stone if you're without sin. And so of course we're all, you know, we're not sinless. So they put the stones down one by one and they walked away. And so then he asked the woman, you know, where are those who condemn you? Now, I don't condemn you. Just go and sin no more. And that's just so incredibly powerful, right? That's a definite act of love shown by Jesus that, you know, I'm not going to humiliate you. I'm going to show you kindness. I'm going to give you mercy. And it sparked the thought or idea, rather, that Michelle posted on Facebook about just her journey as a Christian, how she's evolved from being judgmental to having more mercy and kindness. And Michelle, if you would just like talk to us about it, because I think that's impactful and powerful to see how we can all grow and change, and how where you are now versus where you are then compares to the love that Jesus talks about here.
Yeah, so I don't know that I would say that I've come that far. I will say I'm less judgmental. I think that every day is a process, and every day I'm striving to be more and more like Christ, which means that I'm constantly asking the Lord to open my eyes, right, to those things that that are in me that are flawed. Because I also believe that when we focus on transforming ourselves, when we focus in on a relationship with the Holy Spirit, so that the Holy Spirit reveals what's in us, we have no time to really worry about what other people are doing or how they're living, or, you know, all these things. And so that post, I think, is from last year. It was a memory, or maybe the year before. Either way, I just think back to, you know, that I thought were right, the ideals that I had, the things that I kind of propped up as gospel, and they weren't necessarily gospel. It was more so my interpretation or my application of those things in the word and in the spirit. And so, you know, again, I'm just super grateful that God is constantly working on me, but also that he is reminding me that I am not without sin. And so, you know, just like you were talking about the woman, the adulterer, as they say, you know, who was going to be stoned. It's so interesting to me. And I was actually watching a sermon where, you know, a pastor pointed out how they brought the woman out, but, you know, she couldn't have been committing adultery by herself. But there he is, you know, in front of all these men. And Jesus says, he who is without sin cast the first stone. And obviously, you know, they have to drop those stones. And I think that if there was ever a time for us, a calling on the church to drop their stones, it's now. You know, one thing that I'm grateful for, even, you know, with our study over the last couple of weeks, focusing in on love, because what you start to realize is that when God talks about love being unconditional, it means that, right? Unconditional means without condition. And what we do is we try to attach certain things to condition. So it's like, well, in order for me to believe you or to know you're honest, I need you to have a clean record. Or for you to be worthy of this, I need to make sure you're not doing that. And it's like, no, no, no. That's not what this is about. God is saying, come to me, all filthy rags. And once you start to realize that you are legitimately no better, I don't care. Again, we talk about this. I don't care how many scriptures you can quote. I don't care how many church services you go to. I don't care how many seminaries you've been to. I don't care how many degrees you have, how many tongues you can speak in. None of us are any better than the other. And so that post was really birthed out of me feeling the need to apologize. And I probably should have apologized in that post to say, if you've ever felt judged, if you feel like I judged you, if you felt like something I said condemned you, if you feel like something I've done has made you feel less than me, then I am sorry. And I'll take the time right now. If somebody's watching and you feel like I, Michelle Proctor, have ever made you feel like you weren't good enough, you weren't worthy enough, that God didn't love you, I am truly sorry. And I would love the opportunity to have a discussion with you so that I can say that to you face to face. Because I don't feel like my job as a representative of Christ is to come forward with condemnation. My first and most important call is to love. And I'm grateful that Christ has given us examples like today's lesson to really pattern ourselves after. So that's where we are, girl.
No, I mean, that's powerful. And I think I will follow suit by saying the same. You know, I would like to apologize to anybody if I've ever made you feel like you were undeserving and you was just this awful individual, right? That's not who God has called us to be. And so I apologize if I've ever made you feel that way. And as Michelle said, I am open to you DM me, inboxing me, so we
Please.
can have that conversation, because as a representative, I like that word you use, as a representative, right? When we go in somewhere and you say, well, who are you representing? Our badge is love. That's our badge. And if we don't have love as believers, if we don't have love, then we don't have anything. As you mentioned, you know, basically off of First Corinthians, what we talked about is, you know, you can speak in tongues. I mean, you can move mountains, right? These are powerful things to say. But if you don't have love, we don't have anything. We don't have much. And I think in a time like this, like today, it's important that we reiterate what love is, what we're called to do. In actuality, you know, it's like a Bishop Drake says, it's like Christianity for dummies, right? Two things God has called us to do: love Him and to love people. And if you can cover those two things,
You good.
that's it. And you know, I think we make it more complicated, you know, and I've been guilty of, like, you know, it's always no, it's simple. Love God and love His people.
Mm-hmm.
That's your badge. That's how we know who you are. Because, you know, we say a lot of things with our mouth, but our hearts are far from it.
Yes.
So, and this was like a self-check for me, like making sure I got all my I's dotted and my T's crossed, that I'm displaying the badge of love. What I'm saying I am. I'm saying I'm a Christian. I'm a believer. Do I show it? Can other people look at me and say, yeah, you know, or I don't know, that's kind of questionable.
Yeah.
So I think it's important. This is like a message to like self-reflect, not to point fingers, not to look at anybody else. Just, am I like the religious leaders trying to humiliate somebody?
Yeah.
Am I out here, you know, just trying to shame people because I don't agree, or maybe I don't understand how they live, how they move? Or am I like Jesus, right? It's okay. I don't condemn you.
Yeah.
And I think if we all become more self-reflective, and you said this, Michelle, versus worrying about what other people are doing, then we will have that badge to show. Because we're so busy working on ourselves. I'm so busy working on Tori. I'm so busy making sure I'm good. I don't have time to point the finger.
Yeah.
All I can do is love Michelle. That's it.
Yeah.
And what we'll find in a lot of these stories and just in our everyday lives, we see how love changes people. They don't need our laws. They need our love.
Girl, yes. Yes, 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 yes. And something that you said when you were talking about, you know, you working on yourself, I think we fail to realize how often people are just looking for an example. And my mom and dad taught me this at an early age about how, you know, you be a leader.
Mm-hmm.
You be the leader. So what that means is somebody's always watching you, right? Whether you know it or not, they may never tell you that, but they're watching you. So I don't ever have to shove a Bible in somebody's face and say, hey, get this word, because they're watching me. I am the reflection. I am the representative of the word. And one thing that, you know, if you study the Bible, you start to realize that the Pharisees, it's a lot of Pharisees walking around today. You know, it's a lot of Pharisees in our churches. And I'll say that I used to be a Pharisee. And I'm so thankful and so glad that the Lord has freed me from that, because what it does is it turns others away from Christ. So instead of pulling people into the church, you're pushing them away. And I don't know why we've become so fascinated with weaponizing the word, but it bothers me, and I see it so much. And today, what did I say? I said I was biting my virtual tongue, but I see it almost every day, and it hurts me, because I know that somewhere there's a person who came across that, saw that, and said, you know what? That's why I don't like the church anyway. That's why I don't want to be a Christian. That's why I don't associate with those people. And what you're doing is a disservice to the church. When we try to use the word to get people, it's almost like I said, it's a weapon, right? It's like, I'm gonna slash you up with this word so you'll get your life together. And it's like, no, that's not the way. That's not the way. That's not the way you do it. And I'm one thing that I'm working on is being less judgmental of other Christians who do that kinds of stuff. And so that's something that I really pray for patience in, because I want us as a body to be better. And sometimes I get so passionate about it that I feel like I have to call people out. And that's not to say that I won't call them out still, but you know, the Lord's working on me. What I'm really working on, though, is extending that same grace to people inside the church that I give to people outside the church. And so, like I said, you know, we just really have to be careful. I can count on my hands, at least, you know, every day I'm seeing somebody taking a scripture and they drop it, and you see all these amens and praise the Lord. And again, I know it's somebody somewhere saying, this is exactly why I don't mess with y'all, you know, because y'all rude.
Yeah. And I think it's important that when we write statuses and we say things and we quote the Bible, giving it our own application, you know, not that of the Holy Spirit, that we lead or we type in mind with the badge of love, right? Like, okay, how is this going to come off, right? Is this going to draw people, or is it going to push them away? And like you said, Michelle, like, I'm guilty, because I'm sitting out judge, and I have to catch myself like, all right, they just need some grace and mercy, just like I need some grace and mercy, you know. But it is sometimes sad to see, because it does turn people away. And if we're going to be a good representation of who Jesus was, who God is, then we have to be mindful with how we use our words. As you said before on last, words are incredibly powerful, right? The Bible tells us that life and death lies in the power of our tongue. So we have the ability to speak life over people just as much as we have the ability to speak condemnation over them. And I think we forget to speak life into people. We forget to speak love into people, because honestly, if we keep it real, most of the time, that's all we really need.
Yeah.
Somebody to love us back to life, not condemn us, but to love us back to life, to show us who Jesus was. Like you said, a lot of people will never read the Bible. A lot of people will watch and see us and will still never open their Bible. But I hope that they see examples of love. I hope that they would be interested and say, you know what, maybe I do need to learn, or maybe I can go back, right? Because a lot of people have been church hurt, which is funny, because the Bible tells us that love should begin amongst each other, right? Other believers. That's where it's supposed to be at.
Girl.
We're supposed to be taking care of home, loving on one another, and then we can shed it abroad to everybody else. But we have to get to a place to where it's not about us, because I think a lot of times when we're judging, it's from a selfish perspective, right? What we think, what we want, how it should be. And here Jesus is showing us over and over again, it's not about you. It's not about you. And once you realize that you're representing something bigger, something greater, I think that changes the way you treat people. It changes the way you talk to somebody. When you realize, okay, this is not coming from Shatori, it's not coming from Tori. Like, they're going to take this as this is from God,
Yeah.
right? Yeah. And I don't want people to ever hear me speak and say, oh, that's how God talk? That's what he does? Because that's what people do. And I think we have to take ownership of that and say, okay, you are an example. You are speaking on behalf of the king, right?
Yeah.
And I just think we're not as conscious of that. And I'm guilty of not having been as conscious of that as I should have been, right? But every day, and especially today moving forward, for those who are watching, like, take the initiative to be more thoughtful in what you say and how you say it. And like you said, Michelle, not using the word to weaponize it, to cut people to, I got you, this is where I caught you at, right? The I got you word. That's not what Jesus came. He said it. I didn't come to condemn you, right? So then why is it that we would take that on, that's what we're here to do, when the head man said that's not what he came to do?
Yeah. I saw a comment from one of my friends, hey Joe, and she talked about having a hard time loving people in the church who are ignoring social injustice and racism right now. And girl, so am I. But the way that I've come, I've kind of resolved that, we each have to unpack how we came to the faith and which faith we came to. Because if you look at let's just say the early church in America, right? It was very much an unjust place. It was not a fair representation of Christ. It never was. It never will be in that form or in that method. And so, when we talk about especially interacting cross-culturally, interracially, it can be frustrating, and I get it. I'm very much aware that it's hard, and it's hard. And one thing again that I've resolved is that I read, and when people don't match up with that, I automatically put them in a different category. And that's not me saying like, I'm any better, but that's just me saying it's clear that you serve a different God than I do. And so as I make those personal resolutions, it's easier for me to have confidence in the God that I serve, because I know the God that I serve would never legitimize something as awful or as vile or as horrific as human slavery. And so even we fast forward to today, right? And we see these people who are silent in church. And let's just be clear, it's not just white people who are quiet about racial injustice. It's a lot of Black folks who are also quiet about racial injustice, and they make all these assumptions and these presumptions about what God is doing in this season. And, well, if you just believe in the word, I think that we have been taught a very lackluster gospel, and we don't realize how freeing the gospel is, first and foremost, in the mind and in the spirit. Mm-hmm. And so when we try to pacify people who are actively being persecuted with scripture, it goes back to us talking about doing a disservice. We are pushing people away. That's not what we need to do. We need to recognize their hurt, whether they're in the church or not. And we need to empathize with them. And then we need to go to the word and see what the word says. And all up and through every single Bible I got, the word speaks truth to power, and the word talks about justice. And so, Joe, going back to being frustrated, I think that's a very real thing. But I'll say that I remember our first talk, Tori, about love, when we talked about how love is both accepting, but it also holds you accountable. Mm-hmm. And I think that as church folks, we need to get comfortable with holding each other accountable, to say, like, you're not loud enough about this. If you're calling me your brother or sister in Christ, I need you to be louder. I need you to be louder about this, because if I wasn't in the church, would you still care about me? Mm-hmm. And then we bring it back to your question, Tori, who are you? Who are you? Because God didn't tell us that we needed to just love the church folks. The word says we need to love our neighbor. And we learned what 2 weeks ago?
Yeah.
That our neighbor is every single person we come in contact with. So there's no real way to escape the call to love. There's no real way to have to face that. And we have to rectify that in our minds and in our lives as best we can. But listen, if you say you going to church, honey, I'm expecting you ain't got to be at a protest holding a sign, but I'm expecting you to be saying something. Because if I see you quoting scripture this day and the next day you quiet when a black person is on the street, or a trans person has lost their life, or a white person has been killed by police, I need you to be louder. I need you to be louder. And I need you to make it very clear that you believe in justice for all people, not just people who share your faith, not just people who share your complexion, not just people who share your gender, or people who share your sexual orientation. I need you to speak up for all lives, because we in this humanity boat together. We really are. And if we Christians profess to be believers, then that expectation is that you are to lead the charge against injustice, not to be in the back chilling. That just ain't the call. It's to be in the front.
No, I mean, I agree with everything you said, Michelle, and to Joe, like, same as Michelle, like, it's difficult when you see people who are professing the faith loudly, but when it comes to social injustice, they're sweet. Can't find them, right? And it can be heartbreaking, particularly when you know these people personally, right? Like, oh, I know this person. But the Bible tells us that we know people by the fruit they bear, right? Now that ain't no judgment. That's just looking at the fruit that you bear. So if people who are proclaiming to be of the faith are not producing faith-like fruit, love, mercy, right? Just genuine care and concern for somebody other than yourself, then like Michelle said, I just automatically put you in another boat. That ain't nothing. Grace and mercy to you that you'll come around and see love in the way that Jesus has so in a non-complicated way given to us, right? Of what we should be doing. And like you said, Michelle, we have to be leading the charge. The church should be out front, the loudest.
Yes.
The loudest. And if you don't see churches and if you don't see individuals, like I said, who are professing the faith to do it, just know that there are people like Michelle and I who see that we see it. We're not blind to it, but grace and mercy to them on the other side, right? It's almost like choose a side. We are in a season where you have to pick a side. You cannot ride the fence. You cannot I'm just gonna see what they're gonna do. Like, this is not a time or a season for that. If you are professing the faith, if you're saying that you are a representative of the kingdom, this is your time to show your badge of love. If there's ever been a time that you can do it loudly, proudly, so many different methods and ways, like Michelle said, you may not be marching, whatever, there are ways to pledge your support and your love, right? So I don't want anybody who's watching this thing like we're blind to what other people are doing. We see them, right? We see you. But just know that if you aren't bearing the fruit, then I think that speaks for itself. And I hope that other people would see this and not put us all in the same bag or bunch, because that is not all of us. And that is not the God that I serve. That is not the God that Michelle serves. He's a God of love, a God of mercy, of justice, right? And I don't think we can emphasize that enough. I mean, going back to using Jesus as an example, like, he loved us so much that he gave us everything, every bit. I think in the chapter that we're reading, it talks about Jesus loving them until the end, right? Giving them everything. And that's what we have to do, because, our lives, you may live to be 70, 85, whatever, but it's only like a vapor. That's what the Bible says, right? It's short, it's brief. What are you doing with the time that God is giving you? Are you loving people with everything that you have? Because if you aren't loving God and loving people, then we've got it wrong.
Yeah. And what's interesting is I think a lot of people would justify they try to justify not loving certain people because they feel like God, um, what am I what I'm trying to say is, you know how the Bible speaks obviously about sin, and there are certain things, right? So
Mm-hmm.
what we decide we're going to do is we're going to take what God says you shouldn't do, find somebody who's doing those things and say, well, I can't love you because the Lord said. And it's like, no, 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 boo boo. We are all filthy rags. And I keep saying that because I need people to understand, I don't care how righteous you think you are still but a filthy rag, meaning all of us. And so when we try to use the word to get out of loving people or expressing and showing love, that says more about who we are than it does about who God is. And we need to be real clear when we are saying what God says, or when we say what God does, that we are accurately depicting his character. And we often are so full of ourselves, right? That we feel like, oh, I'm so godlike that I could just say, well, I know God wouldn't deal with this person, or I know God wouldn't deal with that person. And who are we? Like, who are we? We are all imperfect. We are all flawed. And that's why that Facebook post birthed out of that, to say, man, I can't imagine now looking back on it, how awful I look to people, or how bad I made God look because of the way that I was dealing with folks. And I don't want to keep anybody out of heaven. I don't want to keep anybody away from the love that God is, because he is love and he shows it to me every single day. And I want to be the kind of person that if people don't even know me, I want people to say, wow, Michelle, I don't know her personally, but she loves people. And I want people to feel that when they're around me, when they're talking to me, when they see me write something. Like, I want you to know it's coming from a place of love and not a space of, I think I'm so good, or I think I'm so better. And I really think that that's what, if I had to pinpoint something in human nature, why we get so caught up on this whole weaponizing the word and, trying to find loopholes as to not love people. I think honestly, it deals with our ego and our desire to feel better about ourselves, right? So we'll say, like, this person over here is not doing what the word says, but I am. So Lord, that means, right, I'm closer to you, right? I'm more righteous. I'm doing my thing. And I think we get so caught up on that we start doing it to groups of people. And it really does. It breaks my heart, because I have friends who are church hurt and they refuse to go into church. And one thing that I've learned about even that is that they might refuse to go in the church, but I can still be the church to them. Like, absolutely. I can still love them in a way that brings them closer to God. And I don't judge people who don't go to church. That's them, right? But my goal is still to be the church to them and to love them and accept them for who they are, and let them know, or remind them, that God is not a person. God is not a man that he should lie. So God don't get caught up in those little hiccups that somebody made you feel awful for. The things that people told you couldn't do as a Christian or as a member of this church. Listen, God has already forgotten about those things. He's forgotten about them. And I think you should too.
Now, you said a mouthful, Michelle. We could have stopped it right there at the end when you said that. Like, I just want to reiterate what you said. We are to be the church to other people, right? Again, just reiterating what you said. We pride ourselves in just pulling people to come to a physical building instead of just being the church to them.
Yes.
And that will probably get them to the church. And if it does not, it's okay.
Yes.
Right? We just get so caught up in wanting everybody to do things the exact way that we do it, how we do it, when we do it, right? And if you don't do it this way, then you are wrong. You are incorrect. And you said something about God doesn't get caught up in what people do to us, right? So God does not condone what they're doing. They are misrepresenting the faith, right? We see it all the time. We see people misrepresent all different professions, right? So why is it hard for us to see that people can misrepresent the
Yeah.
faith? These people are not us, right? And I think it is upon us also as believers to be loud about that, Michelle, is that ain't us.
Mm-hmm.
I think we have to, as much as we ask other cultures, other religions and groups to denounce people, right, who do not accurately represent who they are. It is upon us as believers of the faith, Christianity, to say, no, that ain't what God stands for. And we have to be so loud, like you said, leading in the front, not from the back, that they know when they see somebody misrepresenting, saying, exactly that. No, that ain't God. That ain't what that is. Because I've seen God's love. I've seen His mercy. I've seen His grace. That's not what it is. And we just have to be, those of us who are like-minded have to be a little bit more louder to drown out the hate, to drown out the pain,
Yes.
to drown out the abuse, because all those things can be found in the church, in people who profess to be believers. We just have to be loud enough to drown those things out.
Yeah.
And I hope people who are watching this and who will watch or listen to this, that you become so loud with love, right, that it drowns out all the people who are nasty, those who are abusive, those who use the word to weaponize it, that we drown them out, right? Because love is that powerful, right?
Yeah, I think another word. I feel like this is a theme. Accountability is it's been such an interesting, like, it's just following every single lesson we have. Accountability. If we think about accountability within the church, right? So lots of people, even we could even go back to this scripture. You were talking about how Jesus didn't necessarily outright call Judas out, but he did voice the fact that he knew that he was going to be the traitor, right? So I think that what we have to do is we have to remember that love also involves accountability. And so as we interact with other believers, we need to sit with them and say, like, hey, friend, no, that ain't it. You know what I mean? We need to say right then and there. Don't walk away and say, I'm gonna just pray for them. No, stop. Say, hey, there's a better way to do this. This is not it. I think that's what we have to do. When you talk about being loud with love, that's what I think about. That's what I think about, like holding each other accountable. And I talk to my parents all the time, and we have discussions, and I love it because they help me and I help them. Same thing with my husband, right? When we're talking, we're having discussions, it helps us to be accountable to each other. And that's what we got to do inside the churches. We got to start holding other church folks accountable, because we can't expect people to come into the fold when there's so much negativity and toxicity in the fold.
Yeah.
Why would I want to be a part of a group of people who are doing the same things, yet saying they are worshiping and serving this God I can't see? I'll just sit over here where I know how people are going to do me. You know what I mean? So it's like, it goes back to realizing that you are representative. And when you realize that you are a representative, you understand and you hold that title for what it is. Like I'm holding the banner for God. When people see me, I don't want them to see me, right? I want them to see a little glimmer of God, because I'm not perfect and I'm flawed. And I'm going to say stuff that might hurt your feelings, and I'll apologize for it. But it's like, I'm not saying I'm God, but I still want to be a representative. So if nothing else, I want you to get close enough to me so that you can get close enough to God. And that responsibility is on me, because I have to make sure that my intentions are pure. I have to make sure that the love I'm giving is unconditional. I have to make sure that the love I'm giving is non-judgmental. I have to do the work, which means if I'm doing the work, I ain't got no time to be worried about nobody else. Like,
while you were talking, I was like, I have like, you know what? If you focusing on you, you don't have any
girl,
time.
24 hours, all mine. I don't have no time to be checking nobody else. I'm working on myself.
Yes. And so going back, we just have to be self-reflective, not them reflective, not self-reflective. And when you hone in on that, how you
Girl.
can be more merciful, how you can be more kind, more patient, more long suffering, all those things that we want people to be for us now. Let's keep that in mind too, right? We desire people to be kind and patient with us, and then we give out the opposite. In the Bible it is written, do unto others as you would have them to do unto you. Like, stop doing to people what you don't want done to you, right? Or you are so gun-ho on something until it's your children or it's your cousin or it's whatever, right? We've got to get back centered to where like God wants us to be. This is a walk where you have to work on you. It's not my job to work on nobody. I'm gonna work on me. And in the process of me fixing me, it's gonna be what Michelle. I'm gonna be a church to you. I'm gonna be the church because I have no other option. If I'm loving God with everything and I'm making the choice, because love is a decision, right? I'm choosing to love people from all walks of life, different faiths, different, like you said, sexual orientations, different beliefs, whatever it is. That's a choice. You wake up in the morning, you make a choice, right? And then we have to make the effort to choose love over anything else.
Mm-hmm.
Because as we say, who are you? If you are representing Jesus Christ, are you doing a good job representing him? That's the question. Are you doing a good job and if you're not, it's okay. We give grace and mercy here on Faith First.
Yeah.
Right? Go repent and get it right. But if you feel like you are, then okay, kudos to you. I'm still working on me a little bit, But we have to make the effort, right? Every day you get up, make the effort that I'm gonna be loving, I'm gonna be kind. I want to draw somebody to God, not push them away. I want to be the light they see, right? Not darkness. We're supposed to be being the light on the hill, right? We're not here to hurt other people. We're not here to be quiet when people need our voice. We're not here for any of those things. It was simple. He said, love him, love God, and love people as he's loved us. And he's been merciful and he's been kind to me, Michelle. I can't speak for you.
Same.
My grandmother says this thing, and I have not fully grasped it until now, about he looked beyond my faults and saw my needs, right? How screwed up and how messy I have been and how I still am, right? But he sees my needs and he takes care of me. He doesn't check the record to see, well, how many crimes has she committed? What's her background like? That's not what he does. He sees my need and he provides.
Yeah.
And if we take that initiative to stop looking at people's track record, because truth be told, we all got some skeletons in our closet, right? And just because these people's theirs is public, right, it doesn't make what you have done any less sinful.
Thank you.
So we have to really get in our hearts and minds the love of Jesus Christ, and I don't want to make it sound like it's just so simple, but it really is, Michelle. He said it. All we had to do was love God and love people. It really is that simple. If you are who you say you are, then your actions should match what you say.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. I was going to say something. I think that, one thing that freed me is I stopped feeling like it was my responsibility to transform people. And I think that sometimes when we get into all of the calls, right, that God has given us through his word, go out into the nations and spread the word. That still doesn't mean that I have the power to transform somebody's life. I can't touch you, Tori, and say, hey, okay, now you are who you're supposed to be. I can't do that. I don't have that gift. And if you got the gift, then, that's you. But he didn't give me that gift. And so when I freed myself from feeling like I had to preach to people in order for them to change, or I had to send them Bible scriptures for them to change, or I had to invite them to church or drag them to church for them to change, I started to realize, going back to what I said, that I am the representative, that I am the church. So if I do everything I can to be obedient to the word, to listen to the calls, apply the word to my life, the life I'm responsible for, then other people will be influenced by my work, right? Or by the work that the Spirit is doing in me. And so I think sometimes, and I don't know necessarily that it's intentional, but I do think sometimes we get a little deep into our religiousness and we think like, I gotta save everybody. I gotta save this friend over here and I gotta save that friend over there. And it's like, no. Jesus already did that. So what you need to do is you need to help them come to know who Jesus is. And there are lots of ways to do that, right? I'm not saying don't invite your friends to church. By all means, invite them to church. Invite them to Bible studies. Share the word with them, but you don't have to beat them over the head with it. And I think that's where we start to go back into Pharisee territory, when we start using the law to coerce people to believe, when really all we have to do is love. Like, it is so simple. What is it? Who is it? Lauryn Hill. She said it could all be so simple.
It could all be so
simple if we would just love. But I think we really struggle with the love part because we don't know necessarily how to love. We've been taught a few things and then we say, okay, well, this must be what love is. And then we go out into the world and we do this harm. And we wonder why the church is in shambles, why young people are leaving the church, why the church is getting condemned all of the time, why people are talking about the church. And a lot of times it's because of the stuff we did, because we hadn't gotten ourselves together. Like you said, we haven't taken care of home. When you take care of home, when you start to really dig in and transform your life and therefore the life of your community and your church, then you can go out into all nations and teach the word. But don't be going out into all nations trying to teach the word if your house ain't in order. And that's a real thing. We talked about it a while ago, but even perfect example, mission trips. We talked about mission trips a little while ago. And we talked about how, certain people will go into these Black and brown countries, saying they coming in the name of the Lord, and they won't go 2 blocks down the street to the housing projects to be with those Black and brown babies, to spread the word to those Black and brown babies. What is that saying, right? And so when we talk about love and exemplifying love, we have to start locally. We shouldn't feel the need to broadcast our love all over the world globally if we have not first met the needs of the people closest to us. And what I love about this word, about what Jesus says, is that Jesus says to us, do what I did to you. And if you think about Jesus's ministry and how he worked, he spent day and night with these people, right? They traveled all over together as a unit. They had community. He taught them. He extended grace to them. He loved on them. He blessed them. Yeah. And you know what he also did? He washed their feet. And I think we get caught up on like the outward expressions, right? So the feet washing. I don't like for my feet to be touched. I'm just going to say it. So I'm not necessarily saying that you physically need to wash somebody's feet, but think about how humbling it is and how humbled you have to be to wash somebody's feet. That's the kind of love that Christ is calling us to. And until you get to the point where you can not even lower yourself, but where you can humble yourself to the point where you can go and wash somebody's feet, you're not ready to give the kind of love that Christ did. You're not ready to be the kind of disciple that Christ has called you to be. And so that is the kind of inner work I'm talking about. I'm talking about dying to yourself daily. I'm talking about knowing that people are calling you out your name or or don't care for you because of who you are or what you look like or what you represent, and still loving them anyway. That's the kind of love that we are called to. Because Jesus didn't die just for his disciples. He died for everybody. The people who believed in him and the people who didn't. The people who cursed his name and the people who called it. He died for everybody. And again, if we got enough on our hands to just try to exemplify this kind of love. So we shouldn't have time to be checking nobody else, because this is the day's work in itself.
Humility, humility, humility. That's all I heard. I kind of want to cry, Michelle. I'm getting kind of emotional. I was like, oh, because imagine how much better our world could be, right? Yeah. If you just took the believers, we don't need everybody. We just need those who believe.
Yeah.
To exhibit humility, to be humble, to not think so much of themselves, to be willing to do the lowest of the low, right? That was considered the lowest servant's job, to wash feet. Like he took his robe off. Like
Yeah.
I'm no better than you, right? I don't put myself above you.
No, I'm getting
You know, but that's how beautiful and how impactful that can be, right? Because we have the power to bring these stories that we read in the Bible to life.
Yep.
We can be what we read. We can be what we read to those who will never read it.
Yes.
If we show humility and we show love, and like, who are we? We have to start backing up who we say we are with love.
Yes.
With love. And like I said, I'm getting emotional, Shay. So if you want to say anything last, cut this off, you definitely got it.
I would just say, you know, as we wrap up these lessons of love, I feel like we've covered almost every single facet of love, any kind of way you can love. But at the end of the day, the people who profess to be believers, if we don't step it up, if we don't get loud with our love, if we don't get militant about loving, the world is never going to change. And I think so often, right, we think that only Christ can change the world. And I believe it. But why can't Christ change the world through you? And why can't he do it through me? And why can't he do it through us? There are enough people on this planet who believe in Christ for us to change the world. But we are so busy. We are so busy getting caught up in our own stuff. And frankly, I think we're just lazy. And so we'd rather sit behind our Bibles and sit in our nice, fancy, air-conditioned worship services and just go through the motions instead of really being expressing and showing the love that God has called us to. And so before this is a challenge. It's a big one. Before you ask God to do something for this world, make sure you can't do it yourself. Make sure that it's not something you can do, because 9 times out of 10, a lot of the things that we are praying and asking God for, heal the land, Lord, make my community better, Lord, all these things, we could be doing it.
Yeah.
We could be doing it. And again, we'd rather sit at home in our air-conditioned living rooms or kitchens or wherever, you know, and just twiddling our thumbs waiting on God. But God has called us. He's given us the call. And the call is love. And I'm going to be honest, when you love somebody, when you really love somebody, it's hard for you to sit back and watch them suffer. And I want our hearts, Lord knows mine has been breaking for a few weeks now. I want our hearts to break so much that it pushes us into action, that we don't just get comfortable sitting on the sidelines, because honestly, the time is up. We don't have much time left to make this life worth it. And so my call, my challenge to anybody who's listening or will watch or whatever, is to just make sure when you ask God to do something that is out of your hands, truly, that you can't do it yourself, because there is so much that we can do in this time and in this season. So
very, very well spoken, Michelle. I don't think I could have said it any better. I do want to shout out Chris from YouTube. He's been logging in with us quite a while, showing us love. We appreciate it. But just to not hide behind our prayers, not hide behind our Bibles, but to take action. We talked about this, about love is active. It's not passive. and that we are actively out here being loud with our love, showing people the grace and mercy that God has shown us and continues to show us, and just being a positive representative. People get enough of the bad, right? It's time that they see and hear us loudly.
Yeah.
That God is a God of love. He's a God of mercy. He's a God of justice. Who are you? You got to be. You got to pick a side.
Yeah.
You know, you got to pick a side, and if you are going to be a representative of Christ, of God, then we need to see that badge of love, and we don't need to wonder,
Right.
maybe, possibly. No. It needs to be. Thank you. It needs to be apparent, right? But thank y'all as always for spending time with us. We love y'all.
Yes.
We are so grateful for all of y'all for just rocking with us these last couple of weeks, right? From quarantine to now here in Georgia, Michelle. You know, we out a little bit.
Girl, I ain't too much, but yeah.
Don't talk about it's too bad. But we love y'all, and we appreciate all your support and all your love and all your prayers that you send up for us. We're always thinking about you. We're always praying for you. Please join us on Friday at 12 noon Eastern for our weekly Friday prayer call. 12 noon Eastern, 9 a.m. Pacific Standard, right? Again, thank y'all so much. We hope you have a great night and look forward to praying with you on Friday. See you guys later.
Bye.